Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Finale, and this is Real Estate Talk, TGIF, episode 348, and that's 344 weeks in a row. We have a repeat guest today, and it's not basically talking about real estate skills, but we're talking about skills of another point that will get you better real estate skills. And Hal Benz, you've been in and around real estate for a long time and helping people, coaching people, life coaching. Thanks so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Dave. Great to be here again.
And we're going to get started 1 minute, but of course, we always have to start with the intro, right? So hit it, Nelson. Real estate agents want to acquire clients consistently to grow their business and income for that great lifestyle. This broadcast brings you the best people in the industry to support that quest. This is Dave Finale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and Align, your premier real estate solution. Again, good morning, everybody. And yes, this is to support any agent, any mortgage broker, anybody in the sales business to help build their business and to really grow something that they're really looking to do. We always have to level up. We always have to make sure we come and we play all out. And to help do that, we have with us today, we have Hal Benz. Hal is, he's the founder of ThriveActive Coaching Solutions, a performance and life coach. And he helps real estate pros and entrepreneurs achieve peak performance and fulfillment. He's a licensed clinical social worker, experienced performance and life coach, over 35 years of clinical practice, and is based in Northern New Jersey. Where else would you be from, right?
Of course.
Well known in the real estate landscape of New Jersey, and has worked in the coaching field as a licensed real estate professional as well. Hal, thank you so much for coming today.
Dave, it's a pleasure.
This is going to be a lot of fun. We've got a lot of great people come on, and Hal is someone I've been able to meet and talk to over the past couple of years, actually, since we started this, which is really, really cool. And you were on previously on episode 131, which is about 4 years ago.
It's been a while.
So it was a long time ago. So, but anyway, here you are. You're back, and of course, we're going to start with the basic question that we ask everybody, and that question is really simply, what does TGIF stand for?
It could only be one thing.
That's right. It could only be one thing.
It's
right.
Finale Friday.
Thank God it's finale. That is correct, sir. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. It's getting more people are getting to know the answer to that question. So anyway, enough ado about us. Just understand this broadcast is brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and Align, your premier real estate solution in North America. Anyway, here we are. So Hal, tell me about your journey. I mean, you life coach, clinical, all this stuff that you've done. Talk to me about your journey to get from where you started out to get to here.
Yeah, and it's kind of an unusual journey in a lot of ways. I mean, I started out as a clinician. I was first licensed as a clinical social worker way back in 1989. And I'm still in clinical practice today, a few days a week. And the work that I did, my training was primarily as a family therapist. I'm also trained in neurolinguistic programming and clinical hypnosis. And I put those tools in my toolbox, and I brought those into really actually medical care. I worked in oncology for a lot of years, helping patients and families deal with the impact and the symptom management of cancer diagnosis and the impact of the disruption in the family. And that led me to a career in hospice work. I actually spent over a decade in hospice care, probably the first 10 or 12 years as a clinician, the last couple of years on the administrative side. And one of the things that I took out of that work, and that was really transformational for me in a lot of ways. One of the things that I took out of that work, that end of life work, was that I came across really two kinds of folks at the end of their life's journeys. There were folks who were frustrated and disappointed and just really unfinished with the lives that they've lived. And then I did come across other folks who while they were sad, they were satisfied, they were complete. And what I noticed about the second group of people was that there was a different way that they lived their lives. They lived with clarity and intention, and at critical decision points, they were able to take action that were in alignment with their core values, while other people maybe either hesitated at key moments in their lives or maybe didn't even notice the important moment was before them in the first place. I did that work for a lot of years, had the opportunity to spend time with hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of folks in their life's journeys. And the one thing that happens for a lot of folks, it happened for me in the nonprofit world, is I followed different career opportunities, and I found myself on the operations side of healthcare as a vice president of operations in a big health network here in New Jersey. And one of the things I found was I didn't enjoy the work as much. I love the business part of it, and we may have talked about this in our first meeting. I just didn't love. I wanted to do the clinical work, and at that time I was catching this entrepreneurial bug. One of the things I did learn about end of life work is when you have moments, you've got to seize them. And I decided at that point, I was in my 40s, I wanted to step out and do something on my own, and real estate became that opportunity for me. So I left. People thought I was nuts, left a senior VP position in a huge healthcare system and started selling real estate. And quite honestly, I loved it. I sold for a few years, had a pretty good, it was 2003 when I got licensed, had a pretty good sales career, averaged somewhere between $10 and $12 million in sales for the first couple of years that I was selling, and then found myself moving then into the management side. I managed for a number of different brokerages, and then really kind of found my space as a trainer and a coach. And most of the work that I was doing in real estate was really productivity coaching, right? Helping people grow their businesses, helping people put in systems and grow their teams and all that stuff. And one of the things that I found coaching real estate agents is that people sort of behaved in many ways the same way. They still at times would struggle to take action at critical points in their lives. And I also found that there's folks who had success. They were building really big businesses, but they were just as unfulfilled and weren't feeling a sense of satisfaction in their lives. And so the gap that I chose to meet was to start to focus less on productivity, and more on performance. And so ThriveActive Coaching is a life coaching and a performance coaching company. And the way you look at life coaching, it's really helping people identify what they want out of their lives, and then helping them to remove the barriers that stand in the way of achieving it. And it uses a lot of the same tools as psychotherapy does. It still uses cognitive behavioral psychology. I still use neurolinguistic programming. I still use hypnosis, all those tools. But the difference is when I'm doing psychotherapy, the focus is really on resolving sort of unresolved psychiatric or psychological conflict. And there's a medical necessity that I need to sign off on. Coaching is really future focused. It's really sort of focusing on goals and what do people want and helping them get there. Performance coaching is different than productivity coaching. And while I still have clients who want to focus on, increasing their sales volume and increasing their unit volume and all those different things, the way I look at performance, it's much more of an alignment of mindset and physiology and psychology and spirituality and energy and all these different things that come together, so that people can be in the best place possible to perform at their peak, regardless of what their craft is. And that's the sort of coaching that I do now. I've developed a 7-part framework that I sort of focus on that helps people to align the different areas of their life so that they can perform at their highest levels. And some of that has taken me to work with some of the big barriers that agents struggle with, like prospecting reluctance or sales call reluctance. But that's the kind of work that I do now. It's really more that life coaching and that performance coaching.
So most people might think that performance coaching and productivity coaching are the same thing. Your performance and your productivity. Performance leads to productivity. So maybe it's not exactly the same thing, but doesn't one lead to the other, or isn't one the same as the other sometimes?
Nah, well, there's overlap. There's definitely overlap.
Okay.
I think productivity is the outcome of having your performance in alignment. And what I mean by that is I truly believe that life is and growth is sort of this inside out process. I think one of the things that we sometimes hear people say is that your business will grow to the extent that you do as a person. And when I talk about performance, I'm thinking about key areas. I think about energy management. I think about things like sleep and nutrition and hydration and the way our nervous system is functioning, our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is functioning. So all the different things that we can do to give ourselves the edge so that we can perform in our craft, whether that's athletics, whether that's business, at the highest level possible. If we don't take care of these other alignment issues, I think there's always going to be a lid on how much we can achieve in terms of productivity.
So where do the alignment issues start from, and how are they solved?
Well, so that's a great question, and I think there's the model that I've sort of developed is sort of 7 parts, and I use the acronym Destiny,
Destiny, right?
right, to talk about it. And the D in Destinies is really about direction. It's about focus. It's about really having clarity on your values, on what you want to accomplish, why it's important to you, right? It's more than just having a measurable outcome goal, right? These are productivity measures and metrics that we use, but really having the sense of direction that's in alignment with the way that you want your life purpose to look, right? Because how you show up in your business, it works better when you're in alignment with the way that you want to show up in your life in other areas. The E in Destiny is about endurance, and it's about energy, and it's about what are the things that we can do to give ourselves the sort of the grit and the resilience and the fragility that it takes, that we can endure tough times and grow with tough times. And that's a lot about things like, I talk about energy a lot, but that's a lot about how do we sort of quiet the nervous system down and do things like learn how to manage stress differently. It's all these kinds of things. S is about service, right? It's about not just being self-focused, but people who focus at the highest levels really are focused outward as well. T is about tribe. It's about community. I, innovation, creativity, adaptability. N is about nurturance and self-care. And then the Y in Destiny is yearning. It's about sort of wanting more out of life. And so what we do in the performance coaching that I do is we take a look at how are we showing up in all these different continuum, and how do we kind of get those to where we want to be. And what we find is that when we have alignment in those other core areas, the business growth comes easier. We don't have the hesitation to do the things that we need to do the same way sometimes.
So, okay, so when we're looking at, I just went through Destiny with you in my head and listened to what you said, and I looked at direction, endurance, and yearning. And you talked about how you're showing up in your business needs to be the same way that you're showing up in your personal life, but that doesn't always happen, right? So is it the desire or the yearning, or is it direction of both? I'm going to call them continuums, right? When we're talking about personal life, when we're talking about professional life, which is personal to business, really. How do we? I mean, look, okay. So give me the example, right? So I, as a business person or as a human being, I show up in my business and I'm gung ho. I'm getting up at 7 o'clock. I'm at the office at 7:30. I'm getting all this stuff accomplished and going crazy. And then when I go home to family, whatever it may be, I'm still in the business mode and I'm not showing up for them the way I need to, or I'm turned off, not turned off, but not as connected, let's use that phrase, as I should be. That happens, unfortunately. I think that happens a lot more than we all want to believe or want to admit in my life, your life, anybody else's life. How do we put those two things, those two lives in concert?
Yeah, that's a great thing, because I think that there's this concept out there of work-life balance, and I don't know that that's a real possibility. Work-life balance.
I don't think it's possible, but I think you can show up in both places with the right energy.
Exactly. I think of it more as work-life integration, right? And what I
Work-life integration. Right.
What I find is that, if you're really going all in, and I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, I've been an entrepreneur, when you're especially in launch mode in a business, you're going all in, it takes 100% of your time and things like that. And other areas of your life can become really out of whack. The thing, though, that we have to do, and when we talk about alignment, is to really understand, for starters, go back to direction. Why is it that the business success is important? What are we trying to accomplish for ourselves and for our families? And how do we show up in a business if we're so many people? When I was hiring agents, right? So I've run a lot of real estate companies through the years, as have you. And so many times people get into real estate because they want to have more flexibility and have more time with family.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard that?
Yeah, I want to make as much money as I can. I want to work when I want, which means basically I don't want to work. So go ahead.
Well, and what you find out is, freedom of time is the reward for, putting in the reps and having a business that gives you the flexibility to do that. But what we talk about is direction here, right? What we're talking about is what's important, why is it important, how far out of alignment are you willing to be with your family so that you can grow your business, and what feels right. That's the thing that sometimes that I, go back to my hospice work and the end of life work. I can't tell you, Dave, how many times I heard people at the end of their life with regrets that said, you know what, I spent so much time on stuff that didn't matter and took it away from the people that did. If I had a chance to do it all over again, I would have realigned my time differently. And so being aware and conscious of those things and making intentional choices as opposed to just reflexive choices. I think hustle culture is a real thing. And I do think if you want to be successful, it does require some hustle. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, there's no question about that. Okay, so let's get into a few categories of individuals that may be in that limbo land, right? Of whether it's direction, endurance, or yearning. I mean, the other pieces of service, tribe, innovation, and nurture are one thing. But let's talk about, if it's okay with you, I'd like to talk about three categories of people, and this just hit me in the head. And I'm going to be real. I'm always transparent here. Is a lot of this has to do with some things that I feel and things that I see in people I'm trying to help. So I'm always going to be, the first one I'm going to give you is stuck agents that have produced a certain amount and then they fall back, or agents that get to a certain point and they can't seem to get any further. And then there's, well, we all know about the up and down of real estate agents. That's the different thing. I'm talking more about stuck people in the sales business, as I said. Either they got to a certain point and can't get any further, or they went up and then they came down and can't get back up. Talk to me about that when it comes to direction, endurance, and
yeah. And there's a lot to unpack there, right? It can be so many different things, but let's start just with direction. I think sometimes one of the things that gets people stuck is that they're not clear enough in terms of what their end game is, so that they're willing to make the level of sacrifice that it takes to get there. I mean, I think one of the things that happens is people get into real estate, we'll go back to this directional idea. Are people choosing to come into an entrepreneurial lifestyle, or are they choosing to run away from a corporate lifestyle? Because that's a very different motivator. And I think that a lot of times what I see happen is people are unhappy with the corporate grind. They don't see a future in it for themselves. They run away from that in the hopes that becoming an entrepreneur and a self-business owner is going to be the solution, without fully understanding what they're running to. And you can relieve the pain of getting out of the corporate lifestyle pretty quickly. Now you find yourself in another thing that you may have gone from the fireplace into the fire. Right?
Well, that's career change was my next category. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things I think people have to make some clarity around is, what are they actually trying to do? Are they running towards embracing an entrepreneurial lifestyle? And what does that look like? Why is that important to them? What is it about the autonomy and the freedom and perhaps the lack of a lid on your earning capacity and all those different things and really understanding, is the drive, is the desire enough that on the days that it's not fun to do, on the days that it's awful, that you're still willing to do it? Now, some of that is habit formation, right? Some of it is sort of just getting into the right routines and developing the right business habits so that they just become reflexive even when you don't want to do them. It's like going to the gym or anything else, right? But so getting clarity around that direction and around those motivators is part of it. I think the next piece that dovetails right into, though, is energy. Because motivation is great. You think about your cell phone. Right? You may have the newest, greatest cell phone in the world with all the bells and whistles, but if the carrier somehow decided to lower the bandwidth on your phone, it's not going to function to the degree that it could. Right?
Right.
I think our energy is a lot like that, and energy is driven by a lot of things. It's one of the biggest factors is are people getting enough sleep? That is such a challenge in hustle culture. I got to tell you.
Oh yeah.
And there's this badge of honor sometimes that says, you know what? I sleep. I can sleep when I'm dead. I'm fueled by Red Bull and caffeine. And there's this sort of badge of honor that I don't need any sleep. What I can tell you is that elite performers don't think that way. Elite athletes don't behave that way. The Navy SEALs don't behave that way. Elite performers look at rest and recovery as a critical ingredient, because without it, they're not capable of making the decisions and doing the things that they need to do the way that they need to do to function at the highest level.
But if you're stuck and you're going through a career change, your mind is going to work a lot, and you're going to so the other feelings that come up are guilt because you're not producing the way you think you should be producing. If you're stuck or you're going to a career change, how am I going to produce, right?
Yep.
You have the guilt, you have the fear, and it keeps you up at night. What's the shit that keeps you up at night is part of the problem of being stuck, because holy crap, how am I going to do this? I've been going through the motions, let's say, and I'm not getting anywhere. So that's going to affect sleep, where mean, I know for me too.
Yeah, it does. And look, I think one of the other things that you take a look at is, the nature of change in this business or in any kind of business. It's not, we're so used to doing something and seeing an immediate response. And we get frustrated, especially when it comes to things like lead generation, right? I'm calling the people, I'm touching my database, I'm doing this stuff, and I'm not doing the change. Every single day you see that as coach.
Yep.
And yet and I know, and they don't know yet. But if you stick with it, it's just like any other thing. If you stick with the diet, if you stick with the gym, it's gradually, and then suddenly, and there's this exponential curve that grows. And so one of the things that I think from a coaching standpoint, we help people do is, where do they focus? How do they understand the nature of change? And how do they understand that the timeline on change is one that isn't immediate, and that's just part of the process? That doesn't mean that you're failing. And reframe that as something which is not a failure, as opposed to a slower process.
So that would also be an education in momentum as well. I mean, what I mean by that is, you've got to start somewhere. You've got to start lead gen, whatever that's going to be. I'm not going to profess which is best and which isn't today. We all have our own thoughts on that. What we want to do, we know it's proven. But the thing is that one of the great things about lead generation is, if you stay in it, the momentum is going to build and things start happening. Right. So maybe it's an education momentum that coaches and trainers need to do too. What do you think about that?
I think there's a lot to be said in that. There's an education in momentum, but I also think that what happens is, when it's not happening, what we experience is stress. And what happens in the body when we experience stress is that it kicks a whole series of different things off inside of our body. We sometimes are familiar with this idea of fight or flight, right? Of your body going into the sort of the self-preservation mode, and a whole raft of neurotransmitters are emitted. The cortisol levels go through the roof. All different things are happening in the body, and what begins to happen is our capacity to function and make good decisions or have that endurance is diminished. And so part of what I do is very behavioral.
Right.
It's very behavioral. It's teaching people, how do you quiet your system? We teach breathing exercises. We teach meditation exercises as a way of calming your system down so that you can endure, right? We also do things like teach people how to manage stress, how to expose themselves to stressors so that they can teach their body to go through it. I'll give you an example. There's a broker friend of mine who's been on Facebook recently, doing these ice water plunges every morning. Right? And cold water plunges are a great way to teach your body to endure challenging times. And those kinds of things are behavioral techniques. And if we can train our body to not automatically go into fight or flight, because that's when we get into avoidance behavior. And that's when we do start to avoid doing the things we know intellectually that we need to do. We just can't bring ourselves to take the action to do it.
Why is that? We know what to do, but we don't freaking do it. Why is that? I mean, I'm asking for myself and for everybody else that I work with.
Well, a part of it is because, the human brain is a creature of habit. We consistently want to do things the way that we've always done them. And to do things differently requires energy. And to do things differently, it can be threatening in a lot of different ways. And a lot of what we're doing in sales, and let's face it, this is a sales business. I think one of the things that a lot of folks really struggle with is making peace with the fact that they are actually salespeople. And I think I understand where that comes from, right? There's all these images of bad salespeople, right? The pushy, the pushy used car salesman, and all those things that we all want to try to avoid. But at the end of the day, sales is nothing more than being paid to solve people's problems, right? And there's a true value in that. It's helping people make decisions that are in their own best interest, so that they can do the things that are beneficial for themselves. But that said, I think a lot of times we push back. We know what to do. We don't want to do it because we have this image that it feels too salesy, and we think that people are going to judge us for that. We don't want to do it because it's a new behavior that our body is just pushing back on and says, no, I don't want to do that. A lot of times we don't do it because we're afraid of how people will respond, that somehow the fear of rejection, right? How many times do you hear that, right? The fear
all the time, every day.
And you can intellectually know how silly that sounds, but your body is hardwired to behave unconsciously to preserve that threat. Because here's what it comes down to, Dave. Human beings are tribal creatures. Prehistoric times, if you got banished from the tribe, it was certain death. You had to find a way to be seen as acceptable by the community or risk banishment. Now, that's the way we're wired. Now, we're not in that kind of a society right now. And yet, what we find is our bodies haven't caught up with that. Our bodies are still unconsciously wanting to resist anything that could cause people to reject us. And then what we also do is we start to go out and we start to artificially crave all this relational stuff. How many times are people posting on social media just to try to see that they get approved, and they're crushed when they don't get the likes that they want? All the time.
Yeah.
Right? These are primal things. And part of what this kind of coaching is about is number one, understanding that this is your body doing what it was designed to do. And understanding that. But two, understanding how can you sort of short circuit that process? How can you redirect that process that's not serving you right now? And maybe even number three, how do you learn how not to react the same way when these situations come up next time?
So okay. So we've talked a little bit about stuck, about career changes and stuff, and all that goes involved with fear and all that stuff. But let's go to one thing that I don't see really much. We're getting some feedback here. I don't know if that's you, it's me, whatever it is. I don't see much discussion as far as when you reach a certain point in your life, where it's like people are trying to figure out, is it worth it for me to put this time in anymore? Is it, do I really want to do that? People that, some might have to make money, some might not care about making money, but they need something to do it. I'm talking about age. Okay. So as we get older, and I'll use me as an example. I know what I have to do. And I don't, in a different way, don't always want to do it. Right. So is there I always ask the question, is there a switch or a trigger or anything that can help people move on and decide that they really should do it? Because let's face it, deciding once you do that completely, is a full commitment to where you want to go. So when it comes to, maybe someone in retirement, or someone's getting older, someone's been in the business a long time and is fed up with all the changes, what is the way to figure out if they really should keep going?
It's a great question. I think it starts, Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People sort of talks about starting with the end in mind. I think it's important to take a step back and really get clarity on what do you want your life to look like. And then what kind of a person do you need to become to live that kind of a life? And where does your business fit or not fit into that at that point in your life?
But here's the person that's been doing it.
Yep.
So what do you want your life to become? And, let's face it, as one gets older, we may be looked upon differently, or as far as I'm concerned, I've got the more energy and can do more things than most 35-year-olds can do. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of my motivation and my passion of everything I do. Shit, I've been doing this for over 6.5 years, and I'm not stopping. So, but there are some that say, well, I don't want to do that anymore, or it's not worth it for me anymore. I'll figure something out. Is there a motivation factor that can push them into motivation, would push them into momentum?
There can be, but there's also a decision that maybe what if being in the business isn't the right thing?
That's right.
Is, sometimes one of the most compassionate things you can do is coach people out of the business if they shouldn't be in the business. But then what do you do with the business?
There you go.
If
Right.
you're thinking about a bit like a business person, think about your dentist or your doctor or your attorney. When they're ready to retire, what do they do with their practices?
They sell their practice.
Typically they sell them, or they have somebody else come and manage them and they sort of stay loosely attended to it, but they step away and they have the energy then to focus on the other aspects of their life that they want to. I think it would serve a lot of realtors and entrepreneurs if they thought more that way. We think as realtors too many times that if I'm not out there hustling and grinding myself every single day, if I'm not the one directly serving clients myself, that somehow, I'm not in business, that I shut it off and the whole thing dies. Well, it doesn't have to, right? And I think part of building a business with an eye on creating the life that you want is, at what point does it make sense to transition? Does it make sense to transition?
Right.
And why would you transition? And how would you transition? And who would be the person, the profile of the kind of person that would do well to take over the business? And what would that look like? Those are the kinds of coaching things that are not specifically about productivity, but they really help people make the key decisions so that they're satisfied with the way that their lives are unfolding.
Okay, so I think we've addressed, and I've addressed things to help me. I'm very selfish with this broadcast, by the way, who I can help and where the questions are, right? So I want to talk about ThriveActive Coaching.
Yep.
I want to talk about what you've got going on. Talk to me about how it works. I mean, we talked about destiny, but go into different things that you do with it.
It's so the idea of ThriveActive is sort of a compound word that I just sort of mushed together. And the idea is to proactively engage in the behaviors that allow yourself to thrive regardless of what's going on around you, right? And it really is about helping yourself to have clarity and strength and resilience and all of these different things that are sort of the outgrowth of destiny to some degree. The way I use it right now, quite honestly, what I'm doing, a lot of it right now, quite honestly, is really helping people get out of their own way when it comes to lead generation.
Get out of their own way. So
that's what a lot of people are coming to me for right now.
So when it comes to that, there's the old phrase, and we may have said it earlier, call reluctance.
Yeah, right. And when you think about what is call reluctance or prospecting reluctance, it's a behavior, right? It's a learned behavior. And it's an avoidance of putting yourself out there in a way to do the activities that would cause your business to grow. And the truth of the matter is, it's so common in sales. Research has been done on this. It's not a real estate specific issue. 80% of all salespeople in all careers experience bouts of call reluctance at some point in the career, right? It's so common. And one of the reasons we see so many people who struggle in real estate, quite honestly, is because our training is kind of wild in a lot of ways when you think about it. We ask with 75 hours of pre-licensing, and look, I'm a licensed real estate instructor as well. I know that what's in that training, you and I both know that there's nothing there that prepares people to have a career in real estate.
Not at all.
So they come in thinking that they've got what it takes. They go out there and they don't get paid unless they convince somebody that they actually know what they're doing and they're skillful enough to be able to get the job done. When, to be fair, all love and compassion in this statement, they're not ready.
Right.
We don't have an internship program. We don't have the things. And that's an industry thing that I think we have to take a serious look at. But what happens, sometimes the reluctance is just because they don't know what to do. And humans, adults especially, have this sort of quirkiness about them. We don't like to put ourselves in positions where we look foolish and where we look dumb.
That's true.
And so so here's what we do. We don't want to put ourselves in a position to try to serve anybody until we know everything about what to do. So we go to every training we can think of. And let's face it, some companies do a great job of training.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot of other companies that, quite frankly, they just don't. They don't. But the good news is that there's a lot of great resources online, places where people can learn, right? I think sometimes people mistake call reluctance for people who are they just don't know what to do. And so, and that's not call reluctance. That's something that mimics that. But when people know what to do, when they've been trained, they know what to do, they know how to do it, but they just can't get out of their own way. Then what we have is disruptive emotions, something that's getting in the way that makes the act of lead generation seem so threatening that they have to avoid it. And we avoid that in any myriad of ways, right? The work, and there's a lot of different tools. There's a lot of different tools that can help people to solve that. But one of the first things we need to do is identify, is it there? One of the easiest things an agent can do to figure out where they've got call reluctance or prospecting reluctance is look at their damn bank account. Are they making any money? What's their pipeline look like? Right? Do they have enough pipeline volume that if that business closes, that they can cover the expenses and live the life the way that they want to? If they're short, then and they're not able to kind of grow that, there is a tool out there. There's a tool called it's called the SPQ Gold. It was developed back in the 1990s by two behavioral psychologists, the only assessment tool in the world that focuses on sales call reluctance. It's not a real estate specific tool, it's a sales tool. And what we find is that there's about 16 different ways that sales call reluctance can show up. People think about telephobia when they sort of make this idea, telephobia as they equate with sales call reluctance. And the inability to prospect on the phone is one type of sales call reluctance. But there's a lot of people who have lots of others, right? There's people who don't have any problems prospecting and growing their business, but they can't prospect to family or friends. There's people,
I see that a lot.
There's people who can serve clients to the highest level, but can never ask for a referral, right? There's people who fall into the trap of feeling that they have to over prepare before they can make a call, that they have to do every ounce of research on the client, every bit of research on the client so that they can be prepared for every situation. And all it does is it sort of soothes their
anxieties,
feeling like they're doing something, but what they're doing is they're avoiding the prospecting themselves.
Yeah, right? It's a sickness called getting ready to get ready.
Getting ready to get ready to take action. Right? We see it all the time, and there's about 16 different ways it can show up.
Right.
What the SPQ Gold does is it really isolates which are the areas that are the most problematic in a person's business, and that gives us then some direction in terms of how do you solve that. Again, we go back to a lot of these behavioral tools. This is a learned behavior. It can be an unlearned behavior as well, but we have to try to figure out, how do we do it? I think one of the things that happens, unfortunately, is there's a lot of coaches out there that just push people to just say, toughen up, just gut through it, right? And look, I get where that comes from. I truly do. And you can, to some extent, fake it till you make it. But I think that only goes so far.
It does.
What we find is it's much more helpful if we can help people not interpret the prospecting as such a fearful thing in the first place, so they can do what they were trained to do.
So we've got the SPQ goal assessment.
Yep.
And that's going to help you. And is there access to that on your site?
So on my site, if you go to thriveactive.life, on my site, on the very bottom of the landing page, there is a self-assessment. It's a very simple assessment that I created. 7 simple questions you can take that start to give you a sense of, is this an issue for me or not, right? And if it does turn out that maybe there's a bigger issue here in terms of this kind of prospecting avoidance or self-promotion avoidance, that there are things that we can do. And then it does make sense probably to do this SPQ Gold. That is something that if people want to reach out to me through the website, we can talk about making that available. That's made available by a group in Dallas, Texas called the Behavioral Science Research Press. I have a partnership with one of those licensees. We can administer that assessment online. It takes about 75 minutes to do. We administer that online. It generates about a 40-page report. And it looks at all different aspects of not just what the type of sales call reluctance is, but it also takes a look at, are there things that are masking that really aren't reluctance? Are there educational deficits? Are there energy deficits? Sometimes what happens is people are reluctant to prospect. We go back to that notion of energy because their energy levels are depleted because they're having problems with a sick child or they're having problems in a relationship.
Correct.
And the energy level that it takes to kind of push through just isn't there.
Right.
And so we have to attend to those things first. This assessment tool helps to really tease apart what's what so that we can help people figure out, how do we proceed with this?
So this is some really great stuff, and I think the 7 questions and SPQ goal assessment is really, really important for people to look at. I have looked at it, and sometimes what you see as far as results of these tests, even DISC, are pretty eye opening. How do people get in touch with you? How do people inquire how to work with ThriveActive and to work with you, Hal?
So going across the bottom of the screen, you see my email, info@thriveactive.life. You can go to that website, thriveactive.life. It is a .life website. It's a life coaching website. So it's not .com, .biz. It's actually thriveactive.life. From there, that's where you can take that initial questionnaire if you want, the simple free one. If you wanted to talk more about, you can reach out to me. There's a contact me page. And I can send you more information about. We would probably set up a quick discovery call to decide whether or not the full SPQ is the right thing at the right time. There is a fee for that, right? That's a $225 investment. Like I said, it's about an hour and 15-minute experience. We generate the report, and then I do a one-on-one sort of interpretation meeting for another hour to sort of help understand what that is. That might lead to coaching. It might not lead to coaching, but just getting that awareness. What I will do for your audience, if people want to do that, I can make that available for a discounted price. We'll go to $199 as opposed to the usual $225.
Okay.
A lot of that price is set by behavioral science in Dallas, but I want to make it as accessible as I can. But I would want to do a sort of a 15-minute call first. Because if what's really going on isn't call reluctance necessarily, if what's really going on is an agent who just isn't being trained well enough, or what's really going on is an agent who's got some other things going on in their life that are sort of taking their energy and their attention, and then we need to focus on those other things first, there's no point in taking that assessment tool and making that investment if that's not the right time.
Well,
So I would do a consultation call first.
Well, that sounds really great, man. I know in our conversation when we ran into each other a couple of months ago was really quite eye-opening for me, and I've gone through a lot of different things to talk about. And look, you know what? Everybody's got similar issues. So, it doesn't mean that there's any problem with you. It's just like somebody is going to help somebody with a switch or something, make one direction switch or not, or just to keep going. And that's what you are able to do and able to help people with. Because look, you didn't just start doing this yesterday. You've been doing this for 35 years or more, and you've got the experience, you've got the know-how on how to do this. So I want to thank you so much for being on the broadcast today. And everybody, all his information is there. His Instagram is there. I got just 2 things real quickly and an announcement for next week. Hal, the one thing is a question: how do I help you grow your business?
Well, certainly, number one, keeping these issues top of mind with people and giving a forum for opportunities like this to have this conversation. I want to go back though and just close the loop on one thing that you said that I just want to amplify. It's one of the things that happens in a competitive culture like competitive sales, real estate, is we look at so many success stories, and we look at all the mega producers, and these people are held up and revered. And we compare ourselves to that, and it's so easy to feel like a failure or to feel inadequate.
Yeah.
And I think the work is to understand that you're only competing against yourself. Your goal is to be better than you were yesterday. And it's not to try to be better than the top agent in your office right away. If people can make peace with that, I think life gets a lot easier. But keeping these kinds of issues top of mind is probably one of the best ways you can help me with my business. And I appreciate you for doing it.
Absolutely. And, this is available. This broadcast is available on YouTube. It's available on Facebook. It's available always, everywhere. It never goes away. We have every episode on our YouTube channel. And just for everybody's, just so everybody knows, next week we have another great guest. It's going to be Mi Yamashita, who is a team productivity coach. She's with Reside Platform. She's a business and life coach as well. She talks about getting unstuck a lot. She actually wrote an ebook on it, and we're going to talk about that again. So anyway, Hal, I want to thank you again for so much coming on. Oh, wait a minute. We almost forgot the most important thing for today.
Uh-oh.
The hat.
Look at that.
See, it's going to match your shirt. It's going to go
Well,
beautifully with your shirt.
big bald spot, which has gotten bigger since the last time I saw
There
it.
you go. And if you go out in the sun, it's going to protect you. So anyway, hey, Hal, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate you. Appreciate it. Just stay on as we go out. Everybody, thanks again for episode 348. We'll see you again with 349 next week. Nelson, hit it.